Hi guys, it's Mia here. Before we hear from my guest today, Richard Roxburgh, I just wanted to tell you about a brand new show that we've launched here at Mamma Mia in the last couple of weeks. It's called The Spill. It's our daily entertainment show that drops every afternoon. Drops around 3, and it takes celebrity news just seriously enough. We kind of like to say that when we cover celebrity and pop culture news, we sit back on the couch with a glass of wine, rosé perhaps, and a raised eyebrow. So it's a smart take on all the things that are happening in the world of celebrity and pop culture every day. It's hosted by Mamma Mia's entertainment editor, Laura Brodnick, who is hilarious, and our influencer expert, Kee Reese, who is just such a delight and a real new talent to our podcast network. It's a great show to listen to on your walk home, when you cook dinner, when you're on the train, when you're walking the dog, feeding the baby, or feeding your cows, when you're on the tractor. They talk about everything from The Bachelor.
This has been a more diverse season. They learned from the past, and I think they're trying to do a little bit of a makeover by having a nicer Bachelor in the main role, but they've kind of missed the mark with that.
To Beyonce's problematic diet.
The reason people are getting upset, although not as upset as they should be with Beyonce, in my opinion, is that she is promoting, and she has been for decades, a really toxic diet culture, and she doesn't get called out on it in the same way that other celebrities do.
To that hit song, Old Town Road, that no one really understands.
What this song has done has really opened up the conversation and for people to really consider what country music is to date.
It's smart, it's funny, it's very refreshing, and it's snackable. You can subscribe to The Spill now wherever you get your podcasts, or follow the link in the show notes for this episode of No Filter. The Spill, everything entertainment every day.
I mean, I've always had this terribly uneasy relationship with the fame notes in this life. I'm private. I like my private life with my kids and my family, and to have to hide and run and hide and shield myself in some way would be so awful.
From Mamma Mia, I'm Mia Friedman, and you're listening to No Filter, candid conversations with fascinating people. There are 2 types of actors, I reckon. There's the celebrity actor, like Hugh Jackman and Nicole Kidman and Lena Dunham, all of those people who are as famous for their lives off screen as they are for what they do in front of the camera. And then there's the actor's actor. These are the men and women who are famous and so well respected for their work, but we don't know a lot else about them. We don't know a lot about their private lives. And Richard Roxburgh is very much an actor's actor. Technically, he is also a celebrity because most Australians would absolutely recognise his face and his name, and they could probably tell you a movie or a TV show that he starred in because he starred in so many of them. But you wouldn't know much else about Richard Roxburgh. You wouldn't know if he's married or not. Does he have kids? Does he live in Hollywood? These were all some of the questions that people asked me when they found out that I was interviewing him. And I think it's pretty safe to say that Richard Roxburgh is not celebrity famous. And it's no accident. He really likes it this way. In fact, he's engineered it this way because even though he's starred in massive movies like Moulin Rouge and Van Helsing and Mission Impossible 2, all of those have been big international blockbusters. And he's also starred in TV shows in Australia here like Rake, and he's played famous real-life people like the murderous cop Roger Rogerson and former PM Bob Hawke. The truth is that Richard Roxburgh, well, he's a little uneasy when it comes to fame, I think it's safe to say. He's got 3 kids, including a late-in-life toddler who just arrived a couple of years ago. And he's married to actress and chef Sylvia Colocca, who's a celebrity in her own right. She's got a cooking show and she has written the most wonderful cookbooks. And they live with their family on Sydney's northern beaches. Richard is currently starring in the new SBS drama The Hunting, which is a 4-part series about teen sexting and a scandal that erupts in a couple of schools and among a few families. He plays the very problematic father of one of the teenagers, and it's honestly the most riveting show. I can't recommend it highly enough. We spoke about that when he came into Mamma Mia, and also a lot more. I wanted to know how he actually prepares for a role. Is he a method actor? What is a method actor? Why doesn't he want to live in Hollywood? What's wrong with Hollywood? Does he envy the lives of his good friends Kate Blanchett, Nicole Kidman and Hugh Jackman? And how's he going with his toddler? Richard is a true gentleman and someone who is very up for a candid conversation about everything. The life of an actor seems pretty mad, and I wanted to ask what today looked like, just as a typical day. How's today rolling? I know we're starting this, it's 9 o'clock in the morning, so you haven't lived a lot of your day yet.
Well, today's an easy one because I don't have much on. So this is kind of essentially my only appointment today. Yesterday there was a lot of publicity for the hunting, so there was quite a bit on, which was kind of a revolving door of going to places and talking a lot about me, which can drive you insane over time as well. And I suppose when you're focused on one story, so the hunting story that you're talking about, you kind of get caught in patterns. You have to kind of trip yourself up and stop yourself from repeating yourself. But that's the publicity day, which again is very different to any other day, really.
The two parts of your life are obviously very different, the acting days. Let's talk about the hunting, and I want to ask you about that process. How does it all start? I mean, you're one of Australia's most famous and accomplished actors. Do you still have to audition for things? I imagine your agent gets sent 100 scripts. How did this evolve from the beginning?
Well, look, in Oz, I don't really audition for things, thank God, because I'm actually just so crap at auditioning. I'm so appalling at it. For some strange reason, I have such a mental block about it. So it's really great that I don't have to, or I would probably be terribly unemployed.
You once had to, though.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because in Oz, I sort of haven't had to do a lot of it ever. I mean, I was very fortunate in a way that I came out of drama school and I went into working at, the Sydney Theatre Company and Belvoir Street. And so I guess from there you get kind of spotted in those days by people who were casting film or TV things, and there wasn't such an emphasis on it. Now, I mean, certainly for American material, you audition. Everybody auditions for everything.
Describe what an audition's like for a big American film.
Well, I don't really do. I mean,
when you had to do that.
What's good is you just can do it in the privacy of your own home now, and you can drive your poor wife completely insane and just say, "Can you just zip down the back with an iPhone and do this with me?" And then I give her notes on how she's reading opposite me and drive her completely mental. So that's how you do it nowadays, which has made it's facilitated it really. It's a lot easier. I still hate doing it. I just hate it.
So your agent gets sent a bunch of stuff. Everyone wants you in their movies,
well,
their TV shows.
I wouldn't go that far. But yes, so in Australia, my agent gets sent things and they get forwarded on to me as have a look at this and see what you think, really.
Do they vet some of the stuff where they're like, oh, he doesn't need to see that. It's not really him playing a, 25-year-old
maybe they do. I don't.
Dancer.
Yeah. Oh, come on.
Well, method.
Yeah. They probably do vet some things, although I have sort of asked them not to really do a lot of that because sometimes odd things come in that I quite like. So in that instance, get an email saying you won't be interested in this, but here it is. So, yeah. But for instance, for the hunting, so I was sent that as, sent the scripts to have a look at and see what I thought about it.
So you're sent a complete script of the whole series?
It depends. Sometimes you're only sent the first one or two. And generally, you want to look at the whole thing, obviously, to see where it goes and if there's a story in and of itself, but also for what your character is doing in it.
So what did you think when you read that script?
Oh, I thought it was touching on subject matter that was so kind of the moment and important. I mean, I do hate the word important.
Why?
Just being bandied about as a kind of this is a story that had to be told. I do hate that. But I guess what I'm saying is that it's a story that I haven't seen told, and it's so key to, I guess to anybody's lives who happens to be involved with adolescent kids or kids going into adolescence.
Do you get like a tingle when you know that this is something that you want to do?
That moment when you say yes to something, it's exciting. It's a buzz, because then it's on, and then your head starts disappearing into that space about how you're going to actually then go ahead and do it.
The character you play in The Hunting is a fictional one. You've played a lot of non-fictional characters, like some of the most iconic people in Australia, including Bob Hawke, Roger Rogerson, and Charles Waterstreet. What's the difference in the preparation for playing a fictional character versus a real person?
Well, just on the point of the Charles Waterstreet, I do have to say that...
Oh, legal disclaimer.
Yeah, that Rake was based... Rake is entirely... my character of Cleve was an entirely fictional character, and was essentially largely sprung from a character who I had gone to university with. So
it wasn't actually Charles?
It was never Charles. I said it was Charles as a joke, really. Once, stupidly on the Australian Story about Charles, I said... Yes, I'm playing Charles, because I was playing a lawyer who was a kind of, who was a freewheeling reprobate of a character, and
I must have seen that Australian Story.
Yes,
which is why I knew it wasn't a biopic, but
it was a very foolish thing to do, and it really came back to bite us hard. But essentially, no, I'd been talking to Peter Duncan, my friend, for years about writing me this character, who was a kind of wild and crazy guy who used to hang around the Union Bar with us, who could quote Shakespeare and was then always being beaten up and kicked out, and he owed everybody money. And I just said, can you write him? So that was the genesis.
And while we're talking about that, let's cover that off before we move on. That did come back to bite you, because when Charles Waterstreet was embroiled in a Me Too sexual harassment case, I shouldn't laugh because it's not funny, but your picture was the one that was used.
I loved that so much. That every time Charles Waterstreet, who had nothing essentially to do with the character of Rake. Look, Charles we credited as a co-creator on Rake, because when we decided to do the story of Rake, we then went to Charles and said, because I knew him, and we said, have you got any good stories? You must have some juicy stories that we can then basically steal and, trick up and put in. And we ended up using one of his stories in the first season of Rake. And then we had the issue of, okay, well, so now what do we call Charles? How do we credit that? And so we said, well, look, we'll just say, and we thought probably at this point that Rake would go for one season. So we said, well, look, we'll call him a co-creator. And so we did. And... yes, and so then cut to, last year when Charles was being talked about in terms of sort of sexual harassment in the workplace, and my photo was everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah. So sexual harassment in the workplace with my photo underneath.
Which is funny a year later, but mustn't have been very funny at the time.
No, I was not. I was really not thrilled about it. I wasn't.
Not your
thrilled.
Best day.
No, it was never great to open the Daily Telegraph and see a picture of me with sort of, sexual issues in the workplace. I wasn't a happy camper at that point, particularly.
So putting Charles and Rake aside and talking about when you did actually play real characters like Bob Hawke and Roger Rogerson, which were actual people, and the characters that you played were actually called them, what's that process like, particularly when they're still alive when you're playing them?
Yeah, it's it's daunting on a lot of levels. It's daunting because you are so. I mean, you obviously just want to do justice in whatever way you can. You also, for instance, in the case of Rogerson, you don't want to demonize him. You don't want to turn him into something that he wasn't as well. I mean, so there's a lot hanging on it always. There's a lot, and there's also the issue of the caricature. So you have to kind of keep the whole thing away. You have to anchor it so strongly in the humanity of the people, so that it doesn't ever tilt into a cartoon of those or a sort of line drawing of those people. So part of that is about, all of the emotional terrain really that underpinned both of their lives.
Was that a real risk with Bob Hawke because he was so larger than life and everyone has a Bob Hawke that they do?
You know, it did used to get up my nose. I was talking about this, that he, you know, everybody. So I'd be doing a scene in that series, and somebody, one of the extras, would come past me and go, "Yeah, mate," and you just sort of, it would just get right up your nose because it just threw you off your game, really. Because I think there was a sense that that was the kind of Bob that Max Gillies had perfected so beautifully. You know, it was a great Bob.
It's like an impersonation.
But it wasn't Bob, you know, in a way, you know. So Bob was, and Bob, as we know, was so many things. I mean, he was a deeply, deeply complex individual, fabulous individual, and a great person to play because of that. So to that kind of constant reductive note of, g'day, mate, you know, just was irritating.
I've heard some actors say that when they're playing a real person, they like to spend as much time as possible with them, and others say they try not to ever meet them. What's your method?
I don't know whether it's a method, but as it happened in both of those instances with Roger Rogerson or Bob, I didn't meet them. I mean, the opportunity never arose with Roger Rogerson. I think he was in jail both times I've played him.
Makes it tricky.
Although we would know where he was, to be fair, always. But with Bob, yeah, look, the opportunity was there, and I chose not to. I didn't want to, because I know that he's such a kind of magnetic and fabulous person. I didn't want to be kind of fabulized by him. I didn't want to feel in his thrall, in a sense. I wanted to have some liberty because I knew that we were doing scenes, we were exploring some areas that I suspected he wasn't going to like.
So you didn't want to become mates with him and then feel
that
compromised.
I'd betrayed him in some sense. And I don't think that there ever was a sense of betrayal. I just think that the warts and all Bob was kind of more fascinating than the kind of perfect spray tan version that you might, or that even he might wanted to have left behind. I think the warts and all, you know, the kind of rambunctious, sort of larrikin, slightly dangerous element of Bob was also really interesting. And the kind of whitewashing of history, I think, is a shame.
So you decided not to meet him, but what do you do to research your characters, be them fictional or real?
Yeah. Well, look, in both of those cases, fortunately, neither of those characters were shy of media, as we know. So there was a lot of footage of them. There was also a lot written about them. There was a lot of observational material around about both of those people. And there was a lot of material of them talking about themselves. And it's in weird places that you find, I guess, the most revealing things. For instance, with Roger, there was this extraordinary footage that I was sent, grainy footage of Roger doing his stand-up show. Because Roger went on the road with Chopper Read at one point doing a stand. Can you, imagine? So they were doing a stand-up show. In fact, I was directing Eric Banner. This is an interesting side note. I was directing Eric Banner in a film that I did called Romulus, My Father, and we were out in country Victoria. We were about 100 k's from Melbourne or so, and we realised that on that night, Chopper Read and Roger Rogerson were live on stage in Melbourne, and the idea of us going and sitting in the front row together.
Eric Banner having played Chopper Read.
Eric having
very famously, and you playing Roger Rogerson.
Yes.
Did you actually do it?
No, we didn't. We were making a film at the time.
Well, it's selfish. It would have been the best story ever.
We had other things to do. But yes, where was I going with that?
Watching a lot of footage of someone.
Yeah, so there was a lot of material always around about those people that was useful.
When it's someone who isn't famous, a character, like in The Hunting, for example, what's your research process for that?
You spend a lot of time in your head. So you spend a lot of time just mulling over the character's actions and trying to locate what prompts them, really. So trying to find a logical and emotional springboard for the things that the character does and says. And if there isn't one, then it's a sign that this stuff isn't written properly. I think you always have to be able to locate that stuff. And then it just sits in your head, swims around inside your head for a long time. And you just read over and over it. You just read over and over the stuff. And
You mean the actual script?
yeah,
and
the
lines
actual
that have been
script,
written?
and try and come to grips with it. And then some things become apparent. Almost always in a new work, it becomes clear that, okay, well, these lines, they're just not work. I can't get them to work. And if you have really good collaborative writers, they'll absolutely throw you a bone there and help you out.
That's something I've always been curious about, who sort of owns the character. Is it the writer or is it the actor? And how does that, not jockeying for power, but how does that work? Like, is it a jockeying for power sometimes?
Well, it's a very interesting thing, that matter. I think with really wonderful writers, and I would include, Andrew Knight and Peter Duncan in this, who were the writers on Rake, that are really, really good writers, understand that if they have an actor who is occupying that world, that they're going to find other stuff. They're going to, there was quite a lot of Rake in the end was improvised on the day, and not the big picture stuff, but absolutely lines. We would throw them around
Because you knew what he would say, what Cleaver would say.
And it gives the thing this brilliance, this kind of spark that I just loved, because you could see the kind of shock in the other person's face of somebody you're a fellow actor trying to deal with that stuff, and come back with something appropriate to what you've just said. So I just love that. I love that world. But I do know that, I have mates who are working on things, and they get notes from production saying, can you please just stick to the script? And I find that terribly soul-destroying. Especially if the actor is good and knows their way around language and can have some fun with words. It's not Shakespeare. What we're doing in the world of TV it's not iambic pentameter. It's not set in stone. So the ability to change it is such a key one. Unless really the actor is not, I don't know, maybe not very bright, or taking it off down blind alleys.
That must happen.
That must drive writers crazy as well.
Yeah. Or it's like, you act, I'll write.
Yeah.
But then with someone like you, who also directs and who's had so much experience, I guess not all actors are created equal, and not all opinions are equal from actors. Would that be fair to say?
I think though, the greatest gift to a writer is an actor, without wanting to sort of blow our own trumpets too much. But I think that, I suppose I always thought when I came into acting that I would have a kind of, I would be able to monopolise the space of intellectual agility or something. But my God, I have met so many smart actors along the way, and my bits kind of trail into insignificance by comparison. I've met so many bright actors in this life from the get-go.
You talk about knowing what Cleaver would say, for example, at any given moment. Like, you could just improvise a scene as Cleaver now, I imagine, and you could be doing an interview as Cleaver, no preparation, and we could just talk, right? And I'm not going to make you do that, don't worry. But
that'd be fun.
Isn't that after you had done that for years? Like, if you're just sort of coming in, like, say, with The Hunting, where your character is not the main character, he has less screen time and there's less backstory, I suppose. Do you still have to know what he would say in any given moment? So if I said, be the dad now and pretend to be doing an interview, could you do that as well?
It's a very good point. And it's actually something that I think is a really useful tool and a useful thing to do in rehearsal for anything that you do, is to sit down and to just talk, to get somebody to fire questions at you, and you are that character. And I like to do it when I'm directing as well, to get actors to play out scenes as the character. I think that's a really useful way of coming at something so that it starts to embed more and it starts to feel like you could take that character anywhere. In the ideal circumstance, you could take, yes, the character that I play in The Hunting, I could take that character into the offices of Mamma Mia, and I could take that character down to the pub down the road or whatever. So I do think that's useful. You're right. Cleaver was so kind of deeply entrenched in my in the fibres of my being that Cleaver was a kind of clown that I was able to bring out every 18 months or so.
Does he ever try to slip into other characters?
I don't really know. And there's also, I guess, there's a sort of line where is it Cleaver, is it me? And so there's...
And also, but do people go, right, Cleaver? Like there's some Cleaver in the I keep thinking of him as the creepy dad from The Hunting. I don't know how you think of him. I don't even know what his name is. Yeah. But
Nick.
Nick. Yeah. You know, there are a couple of shades. They're cut from a similar cloth.
There are a couple of I mean, he's a lawyer and he's a kind of
he's far less endearing than Cleaver.
Yeah, he's I thought it was important that we see him having some fun. He's enjoying his life. Why wouldn't he? He's rich and he's privileged. I mean, I think he's a much more successful, ostensibly successful person than Cleaver ever would be.
He's less shambolic.
He's less shambolic, and yet, as a human being, I think he's a much less safely formed human being.
We're of a similar age, and we've both got kids. You know, your eldest kids and my youngest kids are around the same age. The whole world of sexting is pretty foreign to us. Watching The Hunting really helped me understand it from the kids' point of view. How did you approach it? I mean, your kids are a bit younger, so maybe it's not something you've had to tackle yet, but I know among my friends who've got teenagers, it's a real issue.
Yeah, it's a real issue. And it was an eye-opener for me to do this work. My kids are slightly too young for this to be a thing yet. But it was fascinating to me to be working on this and to hear one of the most revealing thoughts that I thought was such a great distillation of the whole matter of sexting came from Kavitha, who plays one of the girls in the series in rehearsal. And she said, look, I can completely understand why you would do this, because you send a picture of yourself and it feels daring. You're still a virgin, but it feels sexy, and you're so full of love. So you send this picture to the person that you love, and there's no touching. And that was key. And I just thought, it was a real bingo moment. It was a real kind of, okay, well, I get that.
It feels safe.
It feels safe.
Because for us, we go, it's so unsafe. Why would you do that? But that taught me something too, the idea of it feels safe.
Yeah, it feels safe because you don't have to put up with hands going places you didn't want them to go.
And you're in control. Well, you feel like you're in control until you're not.
Yeah, you're in control of it. It's your decision to do it, so it's your moment in time. And I completely got it then. And I thought that was a really beautiful observation and beautifully put, so I do understand it. And what's the solution to that then, Mia? I mean, I don't know, but I do know that one of the smartest thing I've ever heard since was somebody saying, if you're going to send a nude selfie, just crop your head out. I just thought that was great. I mean, because what we need to start doing, and I've been talking a lot about this in regard also to the matter of music festivals and pills, is we need to get practical. We need a practical user's guide, and you're not going to legislate your way out of it. You're not going to police dog your way out of this problem. We're going to have to start thinking in other ways.
We know prohibition doesn't work, and I think the same applies to sexy selfies. You know, it's the same thing. You can't just say, don't ever do it. It's like...
I'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it weird you're an actor, and then depending on the project you choose, you've suddenly got to go and do interviews and sort of be an expert on, sexting. Is that weird?
It is a bit.
Or sexual harassment in the workplace.
Yeah, it is a bit weird. But I do like to think of myself as the world's leading authority on everything. So I'm fortunately ahead of the game.
So I don't understand anything about acting, but I've heard, method acting, from what I understand it, please correct me, is when you stay in character throughout the duration of a project. Now, so for example, with The Hunting, did you have to stay in character, or is that something that less experienced actors have to do because they don't have the skills to be able to go in and out of character?
I wouldn't say it's less experienced actors. I mean, some people just choose to do that. I don't, because I need the kind of relief of getting out of it as well. I would find it sort of completely exhausting. I do know, for instance, people like Daniel Day-Lewis will stay in character for the kind of 4 months of a film shoot, which I would find just torturous. So no, I don't feel the need to do that. I suppose I feel like when you do a play and you're standing in the wings before you walk on, you're working into the character. That's when you start that work, and then you're on and you are that character. But I don't feel like when I come off, I then need to be kind of traipsing around backstage as Uncle Vanya the whole time and preparing a cup of tea and having an iced Vovo as Uncle Vanya. So, yeah, no, I don't do it. But honestly, whatever people's methods are, that's their method and that's what works for them. For instance, there are times, okay, I just did a pilot in the States recently, and I was playing an English rock star who's kind of aging disgracefully, which was a lot of fun, as you can imagine. But being surrounded by Americans, I found the only way for me safely to keep doing that was to keep the English accent going the whole time. So that was one instance, where I was ostensibly English. Americans, they probably didn't notice, but I did. So
How long did you have to do that for?
Well, it was for the duration of the shoot, really. So I was kind of...
Weeks, months?
Kind of 3 weeks. Yeah, 3.5 weeks.
And is that disconcerting for your wife, Sylvia? And your kids?
Well, I would, I wouldn't keep it up after hours. It was the whole time I was on.
But Daniel Day-Lewis would.
He would, yes, and would ask to probably be addressed by his wife as whatever the character was he was playing.
That must be so...
weird.
Strange. You must bring some of that energy home, though. And I suppose this is a question I should ask for Sylvia when I interview her. But what's it like to have that energy come home? Because you have to inhabit, for example, Nick, your character in The Hunting, you had to inhabit that to a degree. Can you just literally shed it? Do you have ways of just going, I'm going to have a shower and I'm just going to take Nick off?
You think you can, but there are some things... For instance, when I'm doing theatre, I find it the hardest of all because you're doing that repetitively, you're doing it day after day after day, and sometimes the energy of that I find really hard to shake off. And also, theatre is so exhausting, so physically and kind of spiritually draining because it's relentless. It's 8 shows a week. Yeah.
Do you get to a point where you're like, I wish I hadn't signed up for this? Like, is there a cycle of despair and then I need this to be over?
Oh, yes. I mean, yeah. I mean, we're completely boring bastards, actors, about that stuff. But it's also kind of weird.
Something you must love about it.
Yes, it's the home. So like any abusive relationship,
you keep coming back to it.
You keep coming back for more.
You seem to have made the deliberate decision not to go full Hollywood. Tell me about that.
Well, it's only really the matter that I haven't gone to live there.
But that's the decision you took, right?
That is the decision because I just love my life here, and I suppose I think I want to do Australian stories. I mean, I suppose I feel in my heart, I feel it's important that people are here and the lights have been left on, and that because God knows there's been a sort of, an obvious exodus of the great and gifted over the years. But it is important that we keep the home fires burning and that there is stuff done here. So that's been just a driving thing. And on a selfish level, I just love my life here and I don't like living in LA. I just can't. I could never rationalise it. And And I suppose for my family, I felt as well, once they came along, I just wanted them to have this life rather than that life.
What's your perspective? You know, your contemporaries and friends are Nicole and Russell and Baz and Hugh and Kate. You work with them, you've grown up with them essentially, and you're on that same level. What's your impression of what their lives are as uppercase C celebrities?
Oh, I mean, it's not a life that I would feel comfortable with. So I look at the life that Kate leads. I mean, it's really right there with royalty. And that for me is a kind of torment. And part of what I've loved is, I mean, I've always had this terribly uneasy relationship with the fame notes in this life. But I feel that I can sort of manage that because I'm just famous enough, but not so famous that I can't go out and I can go out and have a good time, and I'm not sort of the focus of everybody's room. Whereas, you know, if it's Kate, it's like, well, that stops the room, and I would so despise that. I would so, because I suppose I'm just I'm private. I like my private life with my kids and my family, and that's such a key in my life. It's such an important gift in my life that to have to hide and run and hide and shield myself in some way would be so awful.
Don't actors all want to be the centre of attention though?
Well, no, and I think this has been an ongoing issue for me all along. Is I sort of hide from that a lot. You know,
you're pretty mysterious.
A central life, a simple life up on the northern beaches, and that's it. And so, it's a very uneasy thing because, yes, you obviously want people to go and see your work. You want the work you do to be a great success, but by the same token, the idea of that getting sort of extraordinary kind of astronomic shift is horrifying to me. So it's a very tricky balancing act for me, that thing.
How did you meet your wife, Sylvia? You've been married 14 years.
We were working on a vampire movie in the Czech Republic. So yeah, I was playing Dracula, and I had 3 wives, one from America, one from Spain. And Sylvie's first ever words to me were, "Hello, Richard, I'm your Italian wife." And yes, there she was. Yeah.
When did you know?
Well, I would like to think that I had a pretty strong inkling in that moment, but it was kind of, it took a while after that. And Sylvie was still in a relationship, so nothing ever happened at that point. But then by the time we were filming in LA, quite a few months later, she was footloose and fancy free, and so that's when I invited her around for a Thai meal, which I started cooking for her, and she came in and took over.
Brave move. Did you know she was a chef?
No, I didn't. I found out very quickly in that moment in time.
And Thai is not easy.
No, and Thai she didn't even know, but she just knew she could do it better than I was doing it.
The bar was fairly low.
Yeah. So, yes. Yeah.
How do you trust those relationships, any kinds of relationships, but romantic friendships that you make on set? Because I imagine it's such a heightened environment.
Yes, it is. I think the ones that you trust are just the ones that have stood the test of time. And it's not perhaps even that you don't trust the ones that have sort of gradually washed away or quietly receded into the background. It's just that for whatever reason, life and happenstance has meant that they haven't prospered. But sometimes those relationships can come back into your life. I love in what we do that there is the other thing that I love about working in Australia is the fact that it is a chamber industry really, and that you come back to, there are chamber players, and so you come back and you will often meet and reignite those friendships again, and that's a beautiful thing too. But Yeah, I guess it's just that those relationships, they stick.
I've only ever dated one actor, I think, in my life.
Good for you.
It was more than enough.
Yes. Oh, God.
I'm not dismissing a whole, genre of
feel
people.
Feel free.
But they're a lot. Like, you're a lot. He was a lot. And I imagine actors in a relationship and then in a family taking up a lot of space, a lot of oxygen, a lot of, just because of who you are. You're performers, and that's what makes you good at what you do. How does that dynamic play out in a long-term relationship and a family?
I probably don't feel like I'm a lot, Mia.
I mean, you don't seem like that much.
No, I feel like I'm sort of a reasonable amount. And I don't, it's not like I sort of go home and have a sort of a dress-up kit that I want to come out in sort of spandex tights at night and put on a little something for the family.
And practice Oscar's acceptance speeches.
No. So it's what I would describe our family home life as fairly sort of minimalist in that regard, and really it's the enjoyable day-to-day. I mean, honestly, my life for the last kind of few weeks has been doing and relearning my maths HSC with my son, because I've realised I'm basically going to have to do that to navigate my son through his maths at high school. Loving that, weirdly, coming to a realisation that actually maths is quite beautiful. And there's a logic in there that I actually quite like. So I've been sitting with him for an hour a day doing that, and that's been kind of awesome for both of us, even though we just, yell and scream at one another at points. And then taken my 2-year-old girl down to my brother's farm and just hanging with her. And so it's fairly, and, cooking meals and stuff.
You sound like such a diva. You had a big gap between the boys and Luna.
Yeah.
Was that, having the third child, I had a big gap between my first and my second two. Was that a tough decision? Was it that you wanted to go for a girl? I don't mean to pry, but I'm always interested when people have a big gap.
No, look, I'll tell you the story. I'll tell you exactly how it happened. It happened like this. Sylvia and I, she disputes this, but this is the truth. This is the fact, all right? Sylvia and I had the conversation. And we thought, we have a beautiful life. We've got our 2 beautiful boys. And we're good. That's it. Great. And so eventually there came a day where I just thought, holy crap. I got an email from our health cover people, and I thought, holy crap, we're paying pregnancy cover. And so I cancelled it and forwarded her the email. And within 10 seconds, the phone rang. And she was on, and I was having to hold the phone like
She's
at
Italian.
arm's length. She's Italian, at arm's length from my face. And basically the gist of that was that she was not happy that I had done that. And I said, but we talked, didn't we? We did talk. And apparently we talked, but not quite enough. Or maybe she now says her ovaries called me to dispute what I'd just done. And so luckily there's a cooling off period. Within 24 hours we were back on. And within a few weeks, Luna was on her way.
Are you done now?
Oh, God. Are you crazy? Oh, my God.
There's only 2 answers to that question. One is, oh, God, are you crazy? And
no.
which means absolutely not done.
No.
But you're absolutely done.
Yeah. And I see my problem was I'd always mistaken the for, oh, God, in those previous conversations with my wife. But no, it's definitely an, oh, God. I mean, I'm at the gym, I'm doing
How old are you now?
squats. I'm 58, so I'm done. I'm doing squats. I'm kind of, doing Pilates and bending and moving and trying to lifting weights and stuff just to keep it all in the right place to look after this 2-year-old and to navigate her safely into a child seat without rupturing something.
Good luck with that. Does it feel different being the father of a daughter as it did feeling the father of sons?
Well, it's interesting because people said, you wait when you have a daughter. And I just thought, no, it's the same. I do, and it has really been the same. But I just thought when I was down on the farm, in the last week, and it was just the two of us, me with my little girl. There was something that was very particular about that. That was, yes, she's just got me. She's got me.
Richard Roxburgh, you're not a diva at all. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mia. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, I just loved interviewing Richard Roxburgh so much. Afterwards, I went and introduced him to my husband, who's in the office. We love watching Rake together, and we had a good chat. And I've been DMing with his wife, Sylvia, and I've bought her cookbooks, and I'm going to interview her next. Maybe not next week, but the family's in Italy at the moment. You can follow Sylvia on Instagram and see their beautiful family vacation. And when she comes back, I'm going to talk to her about all sorts of things. Anyway, you can watch Richard's latest show, Two Celebrities in a Family. How's that? That's my first question for Sylvia. Richard's new show, The Hunting, is on SBS every Thursday or on SBS On Demand. If you are a parent, if you are a teenager, if you know a teenager, if you are a teacher, if you know a teacher, if you've ever been to a school, you will love this show. I learnt so much about why young people sext, and it really changed my view. I learnt a lot about how hard it is for teachers at the moment, and I learned about parenting. I learnt what not to do by watching Mr. Richard Roxburgh's character. We actually have an interview with the creator of The Hunting coming up as well, so keep a lookout in your feed for that. No Filter is produced by Liza Ratliff. I'm Mia Friedman, and I'll see you on Mamma Mia.